Let's go to PJ Knowles 09. PJ says, I have a ton of hope for this year's squad. My greatest concern is the defense and tackling, as well as creating turnovers. How much of an emphasis can we make on the importance of actually hitting guys with a real thud, bringing the thump, and making sure opponents feel us instead of just diving at their legs or feet? We can't bring a ton of pressure and then whiff on tackles. It'll give up too many big plays on the back. And what's a game plan for sound tackling? Who are anticipated to be some of the more sure tackling guys on defense? Corey, I know we keep talking about offense, and that's the number one thing you got to improve. And I think getting Gus and taking your hands off it, if you're Mike Norvell, shows that you're committed to that, but also getting Tony White. And they looked like they were going to put an emphasis and a premium on being mad and angry and violent during that brief viewing period we got the other day, Corey. So let's dive into this. Let's talk a little about defense. Let's turn cameras on. Let's get this place a little bit juiced up, Corey Clark. Can you help us out with that?
And then hit the button right there.
It's generating discussion. It's sparked by Cummins. Give them a follow on Instagram, everybody, and see all the awesome things you can do to enhance your recreational lifestyle when you have portable power in your hands, whether it's your RV, whether it's your boat, whether you're just on the go, camping and such. Portable generators, portable power stations, all at your disposal when it comes to using Cummins. Also note, I think we're fine, Corey, because this technically is still a July winner, even though it is August 1st. So we will do the drawing for the July winner of the gift bag on next week's show. The winner also gets involved in the grand prize drawing at the end of the year for a portable generator from Cummins. For real. Like they're going to give one of them away, and they're even going to give away a portable power station, Corey. You're going to get both. You don't have to pick. They're going to give you both, everybody. You got to be a member of warchant.com to get involved. Let's go ahead and pop the question on the screen so you can see it, Corey, and digest it maybe a little bit easier. I looked this up a little bit, Corey. So I was going to say Elijah Herring is going to be the most sure sound tackler, but he actually had a higher missed tackle percentage than Omar Graham. Just saying. Stephon Thompson didn't miss any tackles, according to PFF. 0%. I think Herring was in the teens, and Omar Graham was like at 5%, which I'm sure people are like, well, he must have done it all against Georgia Tech. And I don't know if it fleshed out that way, but yeah, this defense, Corey, it does sound like when we spoke to Tony White, he's okay if you're going to make some mistakes. So I know our guy PJ was like, well, we can't afford to miss tackles when we're bringing pressure. That's going to make big plays happen. And maybe it does happen once or twice, but I think he's willing to live with that as long as they play angry, violent, and fast. And there's no reason to think they won't, because his track record kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah, I mean, Nebraska had very good defenses. I don't know what their tackling numbers were, but I don't think they were leading the country in missed tackles. He preaches fast and physical. And to the point of the question, he preaches it in practice because, look, man, it is hard. It is hard in today's college football to practice tackling a lot. But you can practice with more emphasis on being violent and physical, even if you aren't bringing people to the ground, right, Aslan? Like that's what Norvell has talked about. Kirby Smart laments, and I think most of us would agree, there's nobody that coaches a more ferocious defense for the past 15 years than Kirby Smart. But he still laments the fact that they can't really tackle anymore. But his team still play violently on Saturday. You can still instill that toughness and physicality, even if you aren't slamming your team's running backs into the fences and into the bench every practice. Like you can still have that mindset. And Tony White, although a much shorter track record than Kirby Smart, his defense has proven they can do that too. They are usually play a very physical brand of defense. As far as sure tackling, look, I would go back to Herring a little bit. Yeah, it's not great that he missed tackles, but this sounds almost like a backhanded compliment. Maybe it is. But he was there to make the tackles. Like, he at least diagnosed it well enough to be there. How many times were guys that had lower missed tackle rates not even anywhere in the picture? Not taking shots at maybe people that have been mentioned in the last few minutes. But get there. That's the first thing. Get there. And then from there, bring him to the ground. But, yeah, I think it's a worry for every college football coach on earth, really every football coach on earth, is tackling in game days, because it's just something that teams don't do enough. They don't do a lot of during the week and during the season.
You know, a big part of being a successful coach now, Corey, feels like you do have to have that player's coach gene where Like, yeah, you're not going to make these guys just go absolutely crazy and bang on each other every single day at practice. But the fact that it seems like they're a little bit more open and receptive to it, is there any way you can like maybe contextualize what you would think, you would imagine, how much of that can kind of just bleed through other parts of your program? Or is it just isolated to the practice and the games? But can doing more than thudding in practice, will that make you just an overall tougher program and team, do you think?
Maybe, but what good does it do you if you lose your starting 3 running backs because you were too physical with them, or you tear your quarterback's knee up because he was trying to avoid a legitimate collision? So there's the give and the take, man, and I get why these coaches do this now. Again, this is why I go back to when you get 105 guys on scholarship, 15 of them need to be tackling dummies, and you don't care if you hurt them. Like, you're not trying to hurt these kids, but they're going to have to wear it. They are on scholarship at Florida State.
They're a little more expendable. They're a little more expendable.
Well, they are. I hate to put it that way, but they're on scholarship at Florida State. They're the 93rd kid on the roster, so they're probably not going to play. Their value to the team is helping the other players learn to tackle and tackle well. And maybe they're good enough that they vault up the depth chart and end up playing in real games on Saturdays. But, yeah, it's a hard question to answer. I do think it's a hard question to answer, like what is the right mix? What is the right balance? Being physical in practice versus being fresh and ready for games. But you got to strike a balance. And look, man, I just think it goes back to last year. Not only was that team not any good, the defense wasn't any good. They just didn't fill you with a lot of verve and excitement for the way they played defense. Not just that they didn't stop people and they didn't turn the ball over. They just didn't play with any physicality that would excite anyone. They caught tackles. They weren't aggressive. They weren't physical. And they weren't a fun team to watch. They weren't a likable team just from an effort and physicality standpoint. I don't think Tony White's going to let that happen. I do think Tony White is going to make them be physical. And it's also like Earl Little is not Jalen Ramsey. Not comparing him at all to the kind of player that Jalen Ramsey is now and what he was at Florida State. But I remember after the 14 team kind of left us all wanting more with their physicality that they played with, that 15 defense, although not as talented, was much better and played much more violently and physical. And it's because they took their lead from Jalen Ramsey. I truly believe that. Jalen Ramsey was out knocking people's helmets off in games and played with a physicality that was kind of scary almost, especially if you're an opponent. Can Earl Little be that guy? Not Jalen, you know what I mean? Can he be a leader? Can you see a guy that's 199 pounds but plays with a violence and an urgency that isn't normal? Can that make you maybe your third year's linebacker play with that kind of urgency and that kind of physicality? There is a lot to be said for trying to keep up with the other guys that are playing hard and not wanting to stick out because you're the one that's not driving people back when they have the ball. What made Earl Little stick out the very little time he was on the field last year was that Miami game, he was sending people backwards when they had the ball, and it was so unlike any other player on the team that it stood out. Well, maybe now a guy not doing that will stand out, or maybe they'll just follow Earl Little's lead a little bit more because we all think that just the way these coaches talk about him, Earl Little is going to be a pretty important part of the defense in 2025.
Yeah, if you had to go by like each level, I think Earl Little's probably going to be you hope to be your surest tackler at the third level. I go with Stephon Thompson, I guess, just because what the numbers flesh out PFF at linebacker and then up front. Maybe McCray. McCray seemed to get his hands on a lot of guys and bring them down, but I know it's a different level of competition. You'd think Darrell Jackson might remember what happened with him and DJ Lagway last year and make it a point that he's never going to let a guy get through his grasp again. So I'll put Darrell on there. And yeah, I can't think of anything better for this team right now, Corey, than to have like your defensive leaders, like your outspoken guys, like is a guy like Earl Little who predicates and what he brings to the table. Like first and foremost, his calling card is being physical, not being afraid of contact, embracing it. And this might be, wishful thinking, magical thinking, but I just do think listen, man, football practice is hard. I'm not saying that practice was easy last year, but there has to be a little bit of a different kind of wiring in your head when you realize every day you go out at practice, like there's those certain days that are going to be a really, really freaking grind. And it seems like Tony White and Terrence Knight are not shy about creating those opportunities and those days. So to be able to play for them, you're going to have to embrace that. And I think that's just going to just seep and be infectious to all different parts of the program. So at
and
least
don't forget,
on and think about
and don't forget on the other side that you are playing an offense that is going to every day in practice that is absolutely dead set on running the ball. They are going to be physical and they are downhill. And if you're not physical back, you will get embarrassed and you'll be on your back a lot because you can block. The lineman can block people to the ground. They're not supposed to, but it can happen. You can get pancaked. You can get embarrassed and pushed out of the way. And if you don't meet that physicality with your own physicality, it'll be very, very obvious. And I do think the fact that they're going to be playing, we think the offensive line will be better. It should at least be decent. But an offensive coordinator that is absolutely, if nothing else, his whole sole goal in the next 30 days is to establish an identity where they're going to be physical and run downhill. And that starts in practice against this team.
Way to punctuate it all, everybody. It's been generating discussion sparked by Cummins. Shout out to our guy, PJ Knowles09 for the question. He'll get into the drawing for the gift bag next week, and as well as that grand prize drawing we mentioned at the end of the year. Just give Cummins Instagram a check. It's Cummins Lifestyle. It's all one word. Give them a follow, please.